All right, so let's get to the Aleph Beit, the Hebrew alphabet. Here we have it. Now, this chart I've taken from the textbook by Kutz. His first name is Josberger. It's published in 2018. It's called Learning Biblical Hebrew, Reading for Comprehension in Introductory Grammar, page 3, published by Lexham Press. All right, so this is to give credit to their image here. So, the very first letter in the Aleph Bet is Aleph. If you look, and of course, I guess I should mention, Hebrew is written from right to left, like Arabic and many other Semitic languages. And Egyptian, well, you could write both directions. So we go this way with Hebrew, right? Right to left. So Aleph is the first letter in the Aleph Bet. The sound that Aleph used to make, we do not make anymore. The pronunciation that we will be learning in this class is an approximation of Sephardic Hebrew. Even though I'm Ashkenazi, I'm a German Jew, so the Ashkenazi pronunciation is different for some of these letters. But the reason we go with Sephardic is because, well, okay, I'll say something emotional because that helps people's memory. In the Holocaust, it was mostly Ashkenazi Jews who were wiped out. So after the Holocaust, the majority of Jews left. It had been Ashkenazi, then it was Sephardic. And so in the modern state of Israel, the majority of Jews there at the beginning of the state were Sephardic. And so that's the pronunciation in Israel today. So for the sake of Kalal Yisrael, even though we are not learning modern Hebrew, we also are not learning the ancient pronunciation, which the Yemenite Jews preserve, and we also are not learning the Ashkenazi pronunciation. Instead, we will be learning the Sephardic or close to Israeli pronunciation. And this is useful if you visit Israel, then you can read the signs and stuff, right? And you're not going to sound strange with some strange pronunciation or something like this. So in modern Hebrew, we do not pronounce the Aleph. You can think of it just as a placeholder. It will make whatever sound the vowel is. This is not an A. Don't make the mistake of thinking it's an A. For those of you who study Ugaritic, in Ugaritic, there is an Aleph A, but this is just Aleph. It can be A, it can be O, it can be U, it can be any kind of vowel sound. All right? Aleph. The second letter is called Beit, and Beit can be written with or without a dot in the middle. Okay, so here we have B. If it has the dot, it's B. If there's no dot, it's V. Letter V. And at this stage, I want to encourage you. You can type a question if you like, or you can actually ask through your microphone, okay? Just make sure to mute it after your question is done if you have background noise like TV or something like that, okay? So we allow the interaction in the class. Since I can't see you raising your hand or something like that, and I turned off the video camera feature, so this is a B or a V. Basically what you do with your lips, B, V. The third letter is called Gimel. Gimel. This is just a letter G sound, like in English. And you'll see this letter written like this, or with a dot in the middle. Either way. And they have the same sound. They used to have different sounds. With the dot used to be G, like a hard G, and without the dot was a GH, like G, G. But we don't pronounce it that way anymore. But for those of you who are interested in ancient pronunciation, that's how that is. And I do have a couple of textbooks for anyone who's interested. A Practical Grammar of Biblical Hebrew, written by Jacob Weingreen by Oxford Press. And in his pronunciation guide, he does teach the actual ancient pronunciation. This is Dalet, and it can be written with or without a dot on the inside. And Dalet, when it was written without the dot, it was, with the dot we'll do first. With the dot it was a D, like a hard D. Like the tip of your tongue was pointing to the top of your mouth, right? That was D. And maybe I'll change colors here. And if you take the dot away, then it was a DH, like a dia, dia, like your tongue is flatter. You don't have to know that. This is just for those of you who care to know the history, right? Today, we read them both the same. Duh, that's it. And it's kind of funny because in the Arabic language, they're quite proud of they have a DH sound, duh. And they even refer to Arabic as the language of duh. And it's funny, they think that that's the only language that exists, that has that sound, but it really, the older language, which is Biblical Hebrew, had that sound as well. We just don't anymore. Okay, the fifth letter is hey. Hey! And this is just an H sound. Although sometimes it functions as a vowel sound, and I'll get to that later. The next letter is Vav. Vav. And this is a V sound, if there's no dots on it anywhere, okay? V. V. Vav. But you should know that in ancient times it was not a V sound. This is an effect of the influence of Indo-European languages on Jews living in diaspora, right? So, for example, Ashkenazi Jews and even the Sephardic Jews, they lived in Spain until the Catholics kicked them out, right? Then they had to leave. When the Muslims were overtaken by Ferdinand and Isabella and they were made queen and king in 1492, all Jews had to leave or convert to Catholicism and then get called mareños, swine. So when they left, they also took from Espanol, there's no w sound really. And so in the Germans, there's no really w sound. And so what happened, I mean, I guess in Spanish you can have ju, wuan, wan, but nevertheless, this developed into a V sounding consonant. It used to be W in ancient times, which is why it is utterly impossible for God's name to be Jehovah. It's not possible to be his name because that letter is not a V sound at that time. It is now, but it was not back then. Okay, next we have Zayin. Zayin is straightforward, makes a Z sound. Z. Next is Chet. Now Chet, have you ever heard of the Loch Ness Monster? Or there's a Scottish loch. Right? It's like a little small lake is a loch. Loch in English. Okay, so that ch, that's how this sound sounds. It's kind of in your throat, the back of your throat. Loch. The next letter is called tet, and tet, also known by scholars as the emphatic T. So you'll sometimes see this written in scholarly literature represented as a T with a dot under it. But it's fine. Any kind of T sound you can make for this. T. This is usually the letter that's used for rendering foreign names into Hebrew that have a T sound. They'll use this letter for the T. Or foreign words that come into Hebrew today. Yod is a Y sound. Yod. And as I'll show you later, when the Mashiach says, not one Yod or tittle, not one jot or tittle will pass from the law. This is the letter he's talking about. It's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. In cursive, it's just written like this, just an apostrophe, sometimes at an angle, right? Very, very small. This next letter is called Kaph. And you see the shape? If you take your hand and hold your hand sideways and make it curved, it looks like this. And that's what this word means, Kaph. Kaph is the inside part of the hand, the palm area of the hand, right? The palm and the inner part of the fingers, right? That shape that's made. It's also the sole of the foot that's got that curvature to it. And that's the name of the letter, Kaph. Now this letter makes two different sounds. If it doesn't have a dot, it's Chaf, which is KH. And this is very similar to Chet. For now, it's fine if you pronounce them differently. Lach, and this is Ch, Melech. The difference is that this is made in the palate of the mouth, the Chaf. Whereas the Chet is made further back towards the throat. Chet, Chaf. Chet, Chaf. And it's fine if you pronounce them the same, just if you want to know what the nuance is. If we put a dot in this letter, it changes pronunciation, and it becomes K, just a normal K, like kappa. Right? All right. This is what we call the final form, the Mem Sofit. In English, and in other languages that use the Latin alphabet, we have lowercase letters and uppercase letters, right? So if you begin a sentence, you use what? The uppercase letter, the big letter, right? Proper names begin with an uppercase letter, right? Like if I want to say Rick, I use the big R, not the little r. Hebrew does not have upper and lower case, but it does have something similar. And only 5 letters have that similar thing. Here they have boxes around them, okay? These are called the final forms. So if you want to write one of these letters that has a final form, if it's the last letter in the word, then we use this form. This is actually kind of closer if you're a German speaker. In German, most nouns we capitalize. You write it with a big letter at the beginning, okay? So it's the same in Hebrew, but the opposite. We capitalize the last letter instead. So for German speakers, that's a little bit easier to get. Yeah. Das ist nicht so schwer, oder? Okay, so not so difficult. Okay, so here's Kaph Sofit. And you'll notice the dots here, this is not part of the letter. This is showing you that it's a descender. It goes below the line. See, it's further down. You can kind of think of it as this part just bends down. He bends down. Bends down and then maybe lengthens a bit, right? There's a little bit of a, put an angle sign there from geometry. He angles down. He bends down. That forms the Kaph Sofit, the final form. All right, the next letter is Lamed. Lamed. And this makes an L sound, Lamed. But in English, a lot of people don't realize there's two L sounds. And one way that's easy to recognize an English speaker speaking Hebrew is they make all L's, well, they don't make them all the same. They have different L sounds, right? So if you think about it, in the English word label, all right, it has two L's, the first L and the last L. The first L actually sounds different than the last L, if you think about it. Listen very carefully. Label, 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 label. You hear that? The first L is like shorter with an attack. And if you think about what your tongue is doing, label. On the first L, the tongue is up and the tip is touching the top of the roof of the mouth, the palate. L, 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 l. Label. The last L, the tongue is flat. Label, label. In Slavic languages, we would call the second one a soft el smyaki znyakum, and the first would be a hard L, tvori znyakum, although we może nie piszemy the tvori znak. So it's l and u. They actually distinguish in Slavic language between this sound. In English, we don't even know that it's there until you think about it. So the mistake that people make in Hebrew is they use the softer L in the sound, the label, the last one. In Hebrew, it's not that way. It's only the harder L, lamed. It's not lamed, it's lamed. It's l, the l in label, okay? L, lamed. Mem. This is an M sound. Me, 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 me. M, m. In Hebrew, ma means what? Me means who? Who and me? Me. And this one has a final form. So if he's the last letter in a word, we use the final mem, the Mem Sofit. And it looks kind of like a curvy square here, right? Okay. I'll show you how to write them in a moment. This is just, you need to recognize it first, right? Just do your best to reproduce these for now. The next letter is Nun. Not a nun, but Nun. High noon. You see a noon in the sky. Oops, what happened? Go back there. That's kind of strange. It turned on its own. So that is a N sound. N. And then we have the final form. So again, if you want to think of it, that the very bottom part of the Nun, the base part, is kind of folding down, right? So like we do with the other one, we have this, it folds down and maybe elongates a little bit, right? Comes down, think about the bionic sound from the $6 Million Man. Boom. And that's how you get the Nun Sofit, right? See, the top looks the same, but instead of being bent out here, this part came down over here, okay? That might help in memorizing them. I recommend you make flashcards or a list, something you can keep in your pocket. This way, when you're waiting for some public transport or you're in the grocery store, bored, waiting in line, you can recapture that time for your study time. This process is called NET, N-E-T, no extra time. And it's very useful in learning classical languages or any other kind of language or whatever. So when you do this, if it's something you enjoy, you may actually find yourself looking forward to red lights if you're traveling to work or if you're driving yourself or the long line at the grocery store. I actually found myself in this scenario while I was getting excited. Oh, great, I've got some time to study now, right? And you can take out whatever you're studying, your note cards, set in your pocket, your flashcards, and test yourself. Go through and flash them. You put the name of the letter on the back and the sound it makes and the picture on the front. So here's a pro tip. If you are extremely limited in time right now, but you want to commit to the Hebrew, then I recommend that you only worry about the sounds that the letters make. That's where you can save some time, okay? It's best, of course, if you know the name of the letter, but that will come eventually, all right? It'll just kind of come by accident through being in the class. But the sound that the letter makes is really the most important thing because I need you to read the Bible. I don't need you to be able to tell me the names of the letters, right? I need you to look at a Nun and go N, right? Look at a Mem and go M. Look at the Lamed and go L, right? That's what we want. it doesn't really matter so much if you know what their names are yet, right now. Okay, so that's a little place where if you have to cut corners, you can. This next letter is Samekh. Samekh. I don't know why it says Samekh. It's Samekh. K-H. Samekh. I never heard it called Samekh. Samekh. It's with this guy. This is the final Kaph. Okay, Samekh. This makes an S sound, like the snake goes. The next letter is Ayin. 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 And interestingly enough, in Paleo Hebrew, this was just a circle. Like a circle. And the thing is, it was an eye. It's a picture of an eye, right? And ayin means eye. That's what it means. But we use the Hebrew that is used in the Bible is Aramaic alphabet, actually. So the Hebrew Bible, a Hebrew scroll, as far back as we can go, except for a few fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Most of it is written with this Aramaic alphabet. Okay? So don't let anybody fool you. Do not waste your time in pursuing Paleo Hebrew. It's fine if you want to learn the alphabet, but there's some charlatan teachers out there that are trying to convince people that the pictures actually have a bearing on the meaning of the words in biblical Hebrew, and it's just utter nonsense. It's got no bearings. I can tell you as an amateur student of Egyptian language, of ancient Egyptian, that in that language, yes, that concept does work. You can write, for example, the words, you can spell them differently using different pictures that have similar sounds. So like if I wanted to insult someone, I could write their name with snakes and crocodiles, right? Different types of snakes and crocodiles and other nasty things to make it kind of insinuate that they're a bad person, right? I could choose a way to spell the word, but Hebrew doesn't work this way because we only have 22 letters. Not even as many in English. So when the prophet wants to choose a word for the prophecy, he's not thinking about what the picture originally meant, 1,000 years before. He's only thinking, what letter makes that sound? Right? It's the rebus principle. And so when someone tries to say that, well, it's so important, and they really, it's a waste of time. I believe that the enemy came up with this to distract people from actually learning Hebrew. Right? He doesn't want people learning the holy language. Right? And so instead, many waste hours and hours. What does the picture mean? And oh, look, this word has Shin in it, and that's some teeth, and okay, and you can convince yourself. Right? There's a lot of creativity that goes into this, but I would just ask you to look to my Ugaritic professor, Dr. Michael Heiser. I took an Ugaritic class from him, and he calls this soothsaying, and I agree with him. I think it's soothsaying to try to find so much extra meaning in the word based on what the picture used to mean, and it's not even Hebrew, in the Phoenician alphabet, right? So some of the arguments that we'll use is they'll say, well, that was Hebrew, and now we're using Aramaic, right? So it's the language from the East, the alphabet from the East. It's not right. No, that's not true. The ancient Hebrew came from Phoenician alphabet, so even that is from some pagan alphabet. So one is not really better than the other. Actually, I would say the Aramaic is slightly better because it's easier to discern the shapes and what they mean, right? Which is probably why our ancestors chose to keep with it. So there's nothing wrong with the Paleo Hebrew. It's just don't get into thinking that the shapes have anything to do at all linguistically with the meaning of the words. They just don't. They just don't. Okay, continuing on. There's another scholar who agrees with me on this. Actually, I've never heard a single Hebrew scholar who thought that the Paleo Hebrew bore some kind of significance in the meaning of the words today. All right, maybe those very first letters, but it went the other way. Because Rosh meant head, they drew a picture of a head. You see, it wasn't, the picture means head, therefore we'll use that in spelling Rosh. Languages just don't develop that way. Even English developed in the same method, coming from the Greek, and the Greek letters were originally pictures that came from the Phoenician as well. And you don't see like the Greeks that could go, well, why am I using alpha here? Because it's like an Aleph from the Phoenician, and it's like an ox, so it must be strong. Nobody does this. And it's appealing to people, I know, because pictures are nice. Everybody wants a book with pictures in them, right? But you're wasting your time, I can tell you. And a lot of these guys out there who are pushing the Paleo Hebrew, they don't know Hebrew. They may seem like they know Hebrew when unsuspecting audiences can't even read yet, but these guys do not know biblical Hebrew. They don't understand what they're reading. I just have not seen any of the scholarship to back up any of their claims. The one guy who's the biggest about this, he used to teach Italian, modern Italian, and that's his background. And then he kind of learned Hebrew on his own, and he's really making a living for himself now by selling materials and stuff like this online. So just don't get sucked into it, guys. If it helps you for memory, great. If it's a good mnemonic device, great. Use it. But do not use it in your biblical hermeneutics. It's a false hermeneutic. Okay, next is pay. Pay. Pay or fe. So when we write this letter without the dots, like we see it here, it's an F sound, like Philippines. But when we put a dot inside of it, that means that the letter is pronounced like a P, like Pinoy. Right? So these, of course, sounds are always going to be related with and without the dot. And here is a final fe. So just like the others, the bottom, he bends down, bends on down 90 degrees, and then we have over here, here's the descender. You see it becomes a descender. So you recognize the top, that'll be a little bit less taxing on the mind to memorize that. Mem Sofit, we call it, or final fe. It's only ever an F sound if it's the last letter. It never appears as the last letter as a P sound. Okay. Next we have Tsade. Tsade. And this makes a TS sound. For any Russian speakers, it's like this letter, same as this letter. TS. TS. Together. Like the word for land, eretz. Eretz. And it also has a final form, and look what happens. This part straightens out, and this part also straightens out. So he like bends, he gets really lazy. This part goes down, and then this part goes down. And here you go. You have the full extender. That is the final Tsade, when he's at the end of the word. Eretz. Okay, this next letter is Qoph, or Kuf. I learned it as Kuf. There's different pronunciations, whatever. This is a Q sound, but it's not QU. It's not Kwa, like queen. It's K, K, K. This is K, K, and this is K, K, Ka, K. But for practical purposes, people up in Tel Aviv, they pronounce the two the same. So it's up to you. Okay, the next letter is Resh. 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 It's not really an R, it's not Resh. That's the quick way to recognize an American. Haaretz. Baruch. Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Right, you hear that R, right? Or even the Filipino accent. Thank you, sir. You'll know right away. Even though we're not learning conversational, it's not an R. It's R. Sometimes it can be rolled, like in Espanol, but a little bit lighter, like Resh, Resh, Resh. Or else it doesn't roll, and it's just kind of in your throat a bit. Resh, Resh, Ra, Resh, Resh. That's the Israeli Resh. If you have to reduce it to an R for now, that's fine. Okay? We don't have to have pronunciation perfect. Over time, it will improve. Okay, the next letter is Sin, not sin, Sin. This is a long I sound. Sin. Okay? This makes an S sound. The sound is the same as Samekh. To me, it's a bit mysterious why we have these two letters to represent the same sound. And I've never seen any kind of scholarly literature or anything else, and I've looked, that discusses what the sound difference originally was. The only thing I can figure is maybe it's for numerical reasons, right? So that certain words would have a different numerical value for gematria, right? For some of those deeper meanings of words. But you cannot interchange them, all right? If a word is spelled with sin, it must be sin. You can't change it to Samekh, all right? Oh, the other theory is that maybe this was originally the same as this guy, and then over time, through different dialects, it became pronounced as S, and so some words were... Many dictionaries, they group these two together, and so words starting with either one, they'll be in the same column, like it's the same letter. And some teachers just say it's Shin. This is a Shin that's a Sh, and this is with a S. All Hebrew Bibles will distinguish. They'll put a dot on the left side if it's a S sound. And over here, this is Shin. Shin. If you have a mezuzah on your door, you should have a Shin probably visible from the mezuzah, right? Shin. This is the shortcut for El Shaddai. El Shaddai. Notice not El Shaddai, but El. El Shaddai. God who provides, something like that. Although from the Greek pantokrator we get God Almighty. But it's really God who provides. Shah. which means shut up in Yiddish. Shah. Yiddish is written with this alphabet also, so if you ever get interested in the Ashkenazi language of Yiddish, which is Germanic, it's like 70% or 80% the same as German, but it's written with Hebrew letters. Then you can read that too. This is Tav. This is the last letter in the Aleph Beit. So Aleph Beit starts with an Aleph here and ends with a Tav. For those of you who are familiar with the teachings of Yeshua Mashiach, in the book of Revelation, in the Greek it says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. But really, in Hebrew this would be, I am the Aleph and the Tav. The Tav, in ancient times, when it didn't have a dot in it, it was TH. 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 This is why, in English, we get translations like Bethel for the place, right? Or Beth Lechem, right? For Beit Lechem. Because they're trying to preserve that th. In Ashkenazi Hebrew, in Germanic Hebrew, we pronounce this as s. It's a s. But in Israeli Hebrew, Sephardic Hebrew, this is a T sound, with or without the dot. Okay? In ancient times, the dot made it t, and no dot made it th. But today, it doesn't matter anymore. So they're just both t. So he's going to sound pretty much identical to tet. All right.